All right, get us into our next Netflix movie for the
All
week.
right, so I'm going to jump into Extraction. So Extraction is the new big budget action movie that come out on Netflix. I guess coming after Six Underground, which came out a few months ago. Let's not talk about that. It stars Chris Hemsworth. Is directed by veteran Marvel stunt coordinator Sam Hargrave. It's also written by Joe Russo. It's based off of the graphic novel Ciudad, which he co-created, which I didn't know until looking it up. This movie tells the story of a Black Ops mercenary who has to rescue an Indian drug lord's son from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I went into this movie expecting nothing. I saw the trailer only a week before the movie came out, and I thought it looked fairly generic. I figured that Hemsworth would at least be really good in the role and be entertaining, but I thought it was going to be a movie similar to the 2015 box office bomb starring Chris Hemsworth's Black Hat, which nobody really remembers. But I'm glad to say I was wrong. I thought this movie was really, really entertaining. It's in a way, a John Wick level stunt-filled, well-directed, well-acted, and very violent action movie. I think a lot of credit for this movie has to go to the director, Sam Hargrave, who, like I said, has a lot of experience working as a stunt coordinator for Marvel, but also a whole bunch of other movies. He's also worked on his own short films before. He also directed a lot of his own short films. And having seen how stunt actors work and how stunt coordinators work, they are, when they're getting, I guess, action pieces together, a lot of it is them shooting it on their own, or in coordination with the director itself, or himself or herself, and shooting it on their own in like some sort of like little set that they create, and putting everything together. And a lot of it's actually like really well cut together too. Like from what I've seen of like stunt actors who post stuff online, or if they do interviews and they have clips of it in the interview, they put in a lot of work to recreate this later on the actual set. So it's really impressive. So in a way, a lot of stunt coordinators have a lot of experience directing films, even if they're small. And I think for him, this being his first feature, he knocked it out of the park. He did a really good job with this. There's a sequence in this movie that's a one-taker that takes place at first in a car, and then in a building, and then out the building after they fall out of a window, and then in the middle of basically in a car fight again. And it's wild. It goes on for 12 straight minutes. And yeah, you can see moments where like certain cuts are hidden by CGI or meshed together through through CGI and clever editing. But for the most part, for a while, I mean, like if I rewatch it, I don't know if I could really pinpoint where certain cuts are. There's in fact at one point where it goes from one car to the other, and they do a trick similar to what I think they did in the Raid 2, where they had to have had somebody dressed up as a chair, and they passed the camera along and had the person film the rest of the interior shots of the car from that, for the rest of that scene, or at least from what that point the scene's taking place. It's really, really wild. And when I looked it up, I found out that Sam Hargrave had been a stunt coordinator on Topic Blonde, which features a 7-minute one-taker. So I feel like for him, he just wanted to up the ante as much as he could in this regard. I will say about the movie that the violence in the movie is not for the faint of heart. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, like, violence has never bothered me, especially in action movies. I feel like they just come hand in hand. And actually, in a way, it feels like Joe Russo and Anthony Russo, who worked on, helped work on the story but didn't exactly write the script. I feel like this is them blowing off steam for working on a whole bunch of PG-13 comic book movies for years and not being able to go as far as they ever want to. Chris Hemsworth in this movie blasts his way through pretty much all Bangladesh, through like every enemy that he sees on sight. His first action scene, he ends up killing a guy with a small gardening tool, like a small what is it, like gardening rake. And then there's another scene not too far after that where we're introduced to the villain, and he has a child thrown off a building, like a small child. And you don't see the impact, but you hear it, and you're like, wow. All right, this guy, it's one of those things where you think about it and you say, I didn't need that, but at the same time, based off of like how this villain looks, you wouldn't find him that threatening. So just the fact that he has that sort of power to do that to children, you're immediately like, okay, yeah, no, this guy's kind of scary. But yeah, the the movie. What word was that? The movie is brutal, but it's brutality that's used to sell your villain. So in a way, I kind of commend it on being able to go that far. But the fact that it comes from the guy who made the latest Marvel movies, I think it's hilarious. Chris Hemsworth is really good in the movie. He actually shows a lot of one, like his stunt work is really well done. He has a stunt actor to do certain things for him, but for the most part, he's doing all the hand-to-hand combat, and he does it very well. But it also shows a few bits of dramatic acting chops out of him. There's one scene in particular where he's talking to Ovi, who's the kidnapped kid, the drug lord's son, and they just have a little like heart to heart. It's like him talking about his backstory, or like talking about his home and how he left a child behind, his own child behind, to I guess essentially walk away from his family, and how it's in a way affected him after all these years. And it's a vulnerable spot from Chris Hemsworth that I don't think we've really ever seen, except for maybe in Infinity War and in Endgame. So it was nice to see him do it not as Thor, and it really works and really sells well. I also want to shout out I'm probably gonna butcher this name, but Radhakash Jaiswal, who plays Ovi. Look, it was rough. But yeah, the kid who plays Ovi, I believe this is his first American movie, and he does so well in it. Like when this kid cries, you feel it. Like there are a lot of scenes where you can just see the stress of this teenager on his the stress that he feels about this whole situation, and basically the life he has to live. Like the idea that he's a walking target for something that his dad does and he has nothing to do with. And you just feel so bad for him, and you just want him to be happy, especially because, like, he's the kind of kid where he plays the piano and it helps him calm down, and he, like, when he's, like, stressed out in these situations, he just, like, motions piano playing, even if the piano isn't there, and you're like, oh, kid, it's okay, like, you just calm down, you'll be alright. You just want him to make it out of this entire situation, so he really sold that for me. And I also want to shout out Randeep Huda, who plays Sanju, who's Ovi's father's not bodyguard, but like he's his like assistant, and he's there to also help rescue Ovi. And he, if anything, has the most character development beyond Chris Hemsworth, and you end up really liking his character, even if they're at odds for a majority of this movie. But you really understand his character a lot, and you want him to like make it through the I guess the past couple days that they've been dealing with trying to rescue this kid, and also he once again sells the hand-to-hand combat really, really well. So yeah, while I think this movie has a really generic plot, it's basically just we need to go rescue this kid. Okay, we got the kid. Now we need to make it back home. They do a lot with it, and they try to make sure that you the audience are at least as entertained as you could possibly be. Hemsworth is really good. All the acting across the board is really good. Sam Hargrave really sold himself as a really good action director. And I like the fact that we're in this era of stunt coordinators picking up the camera and getting in the director's chair and making movies like Extraction and John Wick, where the plot may be silly or basic, but the action surrounding it and the world surrounding it sells the movie. And it never feels like a vanity project. Like, Sam Hargrave himself is actually in the movie, and he's only in it for like a hot second. Like, I guess it's not necessarily a spoiler, but he gets wiped out pretty fast. And when it does, you're like, okay, good. I'm glad that you're not trying to make yourself the hero. That, take yourself out early on and focus on directing. And a lot of, back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of stunt coordinators ended up directing, and they would put themselves right in the forefront to show what they could do. And while I get that as like a marketing ploy, at the same time, it's like, okay, you're not the hero here. You don't have to be. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was pretty good. Netflix actually had a pretty good weekend. So I would give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, going to your point about, trying to boost your resume with, the stunt coordinators trying to boost their resume by directing themselves and making themselves look awesome. Like, he's been working for Marvel.
Right.
He doesn't. Fortunately, he has the humility to recognize that he doesn't need to
show off.
Yeah, put himself in the spotlight. So I'm glad you liked it. I had not heard great things, so I am surprised. Well, no, okay, I had heard great things, and then I hadn't heard great things.
It's one of those things where I think a lot of people just kind of went in expecting like a dumb action movie. I think they were expecting a Six Underground, but this movie, I think because of the fact that you have people who know how to fight and know how to sell fighting and sell action, without it being over the top. I mean, I guess it's over the top, but like without it being cartoonish, you know what I mean? It just makes it really cool. Like, I mean, the fact that like this movie features Chris Hemsworth picking up a dead body, like somebody they just killed, throwing him and breaking a guy's neck with the body, like, I don't know, like it has a lot more creative things than like a Michael Bay movie. So it's cool. It's a cool movie.